Let's chat with our guest now that I've been talking for the last too many minutes. We've got Jim Norton, Blake Vartanian in the office, in the studio with us this morning, chatting about real estate. And I'll throw it out to either one of you. Who should be
Jim will go first.
Jim will go first. Okay, the square root of 607.
Yeah.
Two.
You know it had to be a math question.
There you go. So what's the catalyst for prices dropping?
There is no catalyst for price dropping. You know, it's interesting. You had OBMMI, if I did that, OBP, whatever it is.
OBMMI, yeah.
Okay. If you go to the chart on that website and you close everything but the 30-year, the basic 30-year mortgage, and you watch
All of them are basic 30-year mortgage.
But you put, yeah, I know.
Jumbo, FHA, VA, which
take out all the others, turn everybody off, and then turn it to 2 years. Go out as far as it can.
Okay.
And then you start to look at it and you realize that mentally we look at the dip to 3%.
Right.
We look at that and it's actually an anomaly in the regular. It's really been about 6-7% for a longer period of time than any other area of interest rates. So interest rates, everybody's looking for a catalyst, like interest rates are going to collapse the market. They're going to do that. People are adjusting to interest rates in a lot better manner. So that's why things are selling still, at least in Southern California. Houses are still selling and they're the
So you think people are adjusting to
rising.
interest rates?
Pardon?
You think people are adjusting to interest rates?
Oh, I definitely do. I mean, personally, I'd love to see them be around 5.5%. I've always said that. I think that's going to really help. But the homes that are coming on the market, somebody comes on the market, they say, "Oh, that home's not going to sell." Within 90 days, that home's gone, and people are adjusting. They're coming up with a bigger down. They're not, maybe they're delaying maybe what they've had in mind of doing some improvements when they bought the house. They're going to live it the way it is, and they're selling. So we're not seeing a drop in. We just don't have enough inventory still. We still have an inventory problem. But
so the question that I would throw at you is: are they adjusting or are they surviving because they have no choice in anything else to do?
that's a.
I mean, if you
an unrealistic question, not unrealistic.
No,
but I mean,
but the reason I throw that out
that's
there
an opinionated
is
question of which way you want to look at it. I mean, you could never get the answer to that. But I think let's just say people are adjusting.
Let me throw this to you. People are they don't have a choice. Some of them are graduating from high school, some are from college. Some are getting married.
Right.
Some are having babies.
Right.
Some are getting divorced.
The 60s.
Right.
Right.
Those are all catalysts. Those are people that almost have to buy something or rent something or get something to put over their head other than the Coleman tent.
If you want to look at it from that position, you have to say that the catalyst that's driving the market. The inventory is able to handle the catalyst. You know what I'm saying? There's a match there's a balance in that right now.
Doesn't inventory always match the catalyst by with price going up or down to meet that
right? But
balance?
there's no additional inventory coming on the market for people that are looking to change. There is no more. I mean, nobody's dropping their 3% interest rate because they want to move to a different house and take on 6%.
That's exactly my point.
We've had that conversation before.
Yeah, people aren't moving because they want to. The only reason they're moving is because they have to.
They have to, or changes. So like you said, let's just say catalyst. The catalyst has come into it, and so that's balancing the market right now. So what's coming on the market is being sold. The problem is that if you're complaining about affordability in Southern California, that is low inventory is causing that, not the interest rates. Interest rates are saying there are no affordable buyers.
Well, interest rates are 1/3 of affordability.
Right. But the other 2/3 are inventory. You got to go ahead of inventory to keep the prices down.
We're gonna have to share this with you though, Jim.
Okay.
So you got 1/3 is just from affordability.
That's 2/3. I had 3/3. Wait a minute. Watch out.
What's 2/3?
I said 2/3 is inventory.
Okay. So what about income?
That doesn't matter.
Oh, okay. I guess the formula that says 1/3 you have to it accounts for
mortgages back again.
We're back to zero.
Did I miss the memo?
I love it when you go down that you take it down a different hole. But you know the point is that
no. I'm just looking at because we do want to make sure that people understand how do you
Yes.
get affordability, and affordability is a calculation of wages, of interest, and property values.
Right, but
That is the
but from
affordability
my
calculation.
perspective as a realtor, the biggest problem of affordability is inventory and product available in certain price ranges. Nobody is building and nobody is selling the affordable product. I mean, if affordable product comes online, it's swept up by investors, by whoever's got cash.
Sure.
And so that's where the biggest problem. And then of course there's such regulations diminishing the amount of affordable product. You notice builders aren't running out to build it, even though there's a demand for it. They're not running out to build it. Why should they build it when they don't have to deal with the regulatory problems of it?
Well, the issue becomes, the regulation, from my minimal knowledge, and you're the builder guy, not me, but if it costs you $25,000 for a permit, and I don't know, maybe you need 10 permits to build a house. I don't
Okay.
know the numbers,
Right.
right? But if you're building a $400,000 house and you have 10 permits at $25,000 each, you've got $250,000 built into it. If you need 10 permits at $25,000 each on $1 million house, now instead of having 60% of your money tied up in permits, now you've got 25% of your money tied up in permits. Why would you want to build the affordable one when you can amortize that over a bigger number?
Exactly. They want there's
So the government says they want one thing, but their actions say they want something different.
right. And then you start to say, well, we need more housing, so let's have more apartments. Now they want to have rent control. So why does anybody what incentive is there to build an apartment when you're immediately put into rent control?
Well, I look at it, and I do a little bit of investing, and I look at it and say, why would anybody in their right mind want to be a real estate investor in Los Angeles County?
I agree. I don't know if
I'm
you
actually surprised there hasn't been a greater exodus
right.
than we've currently seen the transfer of wealth to the Inland Empire and to some in Orange County, but not at the levels that you would think.
Should be higher.
People, yeah.
Well, I don't think
especially
there's
go ahead.
ability to get an exodus when you're with everything that's regulatory on a building in Los Angeles. How can an owner exit it when there's no buyer?
Yeah, but you know something? We're going to talk about this when we come back, because one of the things that we see on a regular basis is generally, you follow the Warren Buffett rule, which says buy when there's blood in the streets. Well, if no one wants to own investment property in LA, you would think that there would be a fire sale, but there really isn't. Let's talk about that when we come back. Continue our conversation this morning. We have Blake Vartanian and Jim Norton, Realty Pro 100, are in studio with us. And we never know what direction we're going, because our preparation time for radio is you're on air now and get going. So we go down a lot of different rabbit trails when we're chatting. But we were talking about before the break, we were talking about, the Los Angeles market. Why is anybody in their right mind buying a investment property in Los Angeles County? Why haven't market value? You would think that property values would be plummeting based on the regulation of LA. What do you think?
In order to have property values plummet, you have to have people selling, and nobody's buying, nobody's selling. So it's just a status quo. I would first have to look into is see how many buildings are either outright owned, are paid, how low they're paid down. That would probably be one of the factors, as opposed to San Francisco, where that's blood in the streets. That's completely there. The prices are collapsing and everything. So
I've seen some of that lately.
Maybe it's just the fact that San Francisco's a year ahead of LA. It could be that.
That could be.
And we just haven't started to see the break yet. But right now, there's just nobody leaving LA because there's nobody buying LA. And that's why everybody's in the surrounding areas.
Let's put Jim Norton as a hedge fund manager. Would you go and buy in San Francisco, or would you be buying in Los Angeles? based on the, if property values start plummeting? Do you think it's going to be a market cycle change?
I just had this conversation with my son the other day. We were watching something.
We're not going to call you daddy.
No, we're not going to call you. Call me dad. He doesn't either.
Okay.
I might.
But the point was, is we were
Okay.
watching.
I've known him a long time.
We were watching. I forgot what show it was, but they were showing Detroit.
Okay.
And you're looking at it. We were commenting saying, if there's so much available empty space and land in downtown area Detroit, why isn't anybody moving in, picking it up for cheap, and then building something?
I've seen where you could buy a whole block in Detroit for
Exactly.
$5,000.
Right. So
Yeah, I've seen that going on.
Yeah.
But nobody's doing it. So is that the same situation where you're going to say, well, wait a minute, you could buy up San Francisco, but the regulations and the problems are not going to go away. It's not going to make it easy to bring that product back online. In a given
Almost have to
time.
do it as a long-term hold.
Yeah. I think,
Could you imagine holding again, that's always your comment. Holding something with no price appreciation and equity, equity makes you zero
Right.
money.
No rate of return.
Yeah, zero rate of return. So I don't know. That's a good question. Are we watching?
That's why I get to be the host and ask you guys, the experts here. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Blake.
well, in a more balanced market, you're going to have the focus on location as the three key elements of establishing value. And I've always believed that in the absence of value, price becomes the issue. And price is the one thing that can fix everything about a house. If in the eyes of the buyer, the value isn't there, they're going to make their offer accordingly, and everyone's going to have their own opinion. I could show someone an investment opportunity like we did just before the 4th of July. I got a call on the units down, 3-unit property in Sunset Beach, and one of the investors we have passed on it, said, I don't see the opportunity there. Another investor is now in escrow and is going to close it. And it was an off-market offering from a longtime broker friend of mine who had a pocket listing. And so the buyers didn't have to compete with the entire market to be able to go and buy it. So we specialize in those kinds of properties. In fact, several of the transactions on our sales board right now are from people who the value was demonstrated to them of what their property could sell if they brought it on the market. But for whatever reason, they decided they didn't want to do that. So the belief that people aren't buying and selling real estate that's a fallacy. But people are buying in lower numbers because there's fewer properties available. And if the normal market took place, in other words, you had 8 or 9 or 10,000 Orange County active listings instead of 2,300 to 2,400, you might see, a different demand cycle. It doesn't mean that it would drop just because there's more inventory, because if we could get interest rates, moderated, about a third of the properties are owned without a mortgage. So those people aren't worried about a mortgage. They're not looking for mortgage money. But it does have a stifling impact when the family creation. So a family starting off and they go to the marketplace and they go, I got to pay $1 million for a starter home in, let's say, Yorba Linda or Placentia, roughly $1 million. And then I'm going to have a 7.5% mortgage, as opposed to 2 years ago, I could have bought that property at $850 or $900 and had a 2.5% or 3% mortgage. There's a big difference in the payment, and there's a big difference in the psychology behind it. And
is there really though, Blake? Because I'm going to throw this at you.
Well, because agents today don't know how to make it less significant. Because any agent who's gotten licensed in the last 10 or 11 years has never dealt with a mortgage environment at 7%.
Sure.
Guys like me, I started in 1981. Interest rates were 17, 18, 19%. You could literally buy your house on your credit card almost for the same interest payment.
Sure.
Right. And so today, how you package that and show people their after-tax opportunities, the long-term trend, like your information that you always provide people, where you show that only 2 times in recent history, 40 or 50 years, did the market actually drop during a recession.
Right.
It was 91 and 2008, right?
Sure.
I think that's
Real,
it-
and real
and they were
estate
just
led
small-
recessions.
and they were just
Yeah.
small, and they were just small, those were in the relative time of 40 years, those were small, short periods of time. They had major impacts on the people who were affected, but those passed. I mean, and then we put out the chart last week that showed that no time in history has there been in Southern California real estate, has there been a 10-year trend where the property was worth less 10 years after you bought it.
True.
Right.
That's never happened.
So one of the things I want to talk about when we come back is you made a comment about the interest rates and property values, but you'd also discussed about the household formation.
Yes.
So I want to talk about that when we come back. Continue our conversation this morning. We've got Blake Vartanian, Jim Norton, Realty Pro 100. They are in the house just chatting here. A little bit of I would say a fireside chat, but it's too darn hot for fire. So maybe, and we don't have any alcohol, so it can't be a poolside.
Brandy chat.
Okay, so maybe it's water. I got water here. That doesn't count. So before the break, Blake, you made a comment about, people are still buying and had, I'll use the formal term. I think you used family formation. I just call it household formation, just because that's what the economists call it. And some people used to think I was going to be an economist. They thought wrong. So, the household formation, they're not really paying attention. They look at it and say, okay, I just got married. I'm going to have a baby. Maybe I don't want to talk about the order those things happen, but they're not worried about interest rates 2 years ago. They can't go backwards. They're not worried about home prices from 2 years ago. So they really don't have a choice. They have to look at today's rates and today's property if they want something other than the Coleman 10 to live in.
But that's logical as a real estate investor. That's the logic you want to do. You don't want to look at what you could have had or should have done. You want to look at what is ahead and what you can do with it. And that's why
current and forecast.
My recommendation, if somebody asked me what's the best time to buy, it's when you're ready to buy. And that is, if it's right now, then we deal with the conditions that there are. Because as you said before, if interest rates go down, you can refi. And we've all done that throughout our careers, and we've done well with it.
Thank goodness.
It's, you don't know what's going to be tomorrow. It could be up, it could be down. I mean, if we had that crystal ball, we wouldn't be talking on radio. We'd be in Tahiti.
Right.
Okay. So the point is what you know today is the only information that is solid, 100%. Tomorrow it's going to be different. Yesterday it was different. You can't go backwards, like you said. So why bother? But also you can't predict the future. So why today is the day you can know everything that you can deal with when you're buying a
Make
house.
a business decision based on
your
what
costs.
current environment.
The past sale price has no bearing really on the future sales price because it's the two people in the transaction, right? And so if the person has the equity and the desire to move, they might take something that's lower. And this was first proven to me in 1982 when my first broker, we had an investor walk in the office and he said, I want to make a 50% offer on every single listing your company has in its inventory. And I was on the floor and I was like, I don't think so. I don't want to present those offers to my client. And my broker came out and said, we're going to do it. And we actually ended up selling one of the properties on it because the people needed the money to pay their property taxes. Now, did we benefit from that? I guess we sold a property representing the client, and the client made their decision about whether they wanted to sell it or not.
Sure.
Right? All of my
reasons.
listings, they were immediately, no, I'm not selling it for that because I explained I have to present it under state law. And you decide whether you want it or not. The biggest thing right now in the United States is that you have all of these big companies, Black Knight, et cetera, that are buying thousands and thousands of homes a month across the country. And they're converting those to rental properties, therefore taking those properties off the market for people to buy. And they're competing with other potential buyers in the market. They have these massive funds coming out of Wall Street that they can afford to overpay and still benefit from it. I mean, we've seen some of the tech companies overpay for property because they'll buy it for 1.3 million, turn around, sell it for 1.2 million because they expense out on the 1.3 million side, and then they have new revenue at 1.2 million that's traded at a 6, 7, or 8 times multiplier. So they play a little math game that's kind of it's not legitimate.
Yeah, most of my clients do that.
Well, yeah, but individuals don't, right?
Exactly.
But within the marketplace, there's about 4 million households that are short in the creation of housing units to have what they would call a balanced market in the United States. So I'm not saying they're all in Southern California. I don't know what percentage are in Southern California, but we certainly see if something's priced right, it's going to get a lot more interest than something that's overpriced. And if it's slightly below market, the buyers are going to come in much larger numbers because there's a perceived value there that they want to see if they'll be able to get a deal.
So why would somebody, Blake, I want to throw this at you because you made a comment in the last segment. Why would that individual, what's a catalyst for an individual property owner to say, you know something, I don't want to have my property put on the market. I'd rather do an off-market transaction?
Well, so in some cases, they don't want their neighbors to know. They don't want people coming through their house. They're afraid of being robbed. They're afraid of, whatever their issue is. I'm not advocating it. I'm just saying that's what.
No, that's what I was wondering is what if I was this seller, why might I consider doing an off market versus doing?
Well, we had a situation in Anaheim a couple of years ago where a gentleman was in his 80s and his children were fighting over his property, and he didn't want a sign in the yard because he said then when the kids came over, they would be angry and they would be fighting amongst themselves for what's his money.
Sure.
He says, I'm still alive. It's my money and I want to move.
Okay.
And some people don't want the fluctuation that can occur when it gets into the MLS, and you get a bevy of investors that are lowballing, and then they start to distract from you. So it's just too much information being thrown at them when they want the deal. And it's like they say, okay, I want $750,000 for my house, which would be a great price. And then and they're agreeable to that. And then you say, well, agent 2 has a buyer and they're 750, and it's just the simplicity of the transaction.
Okay.
Otherwise, the amount of knowledge that can go on is very confusing. And I can understand why some people just want to avoid that.
So, I mean, my first purchase in 1979, interest rates were around 12 or 13% on their way up.
Sure.
So they were going to 18, 19%. And my brother and I decided instead of each of us going and renting a place, we put our money together and we bought our first property together. And it gave us the ability to invest in real estate at an early age. And I would suggest to parents who are thinking about sending their kids off to college and paying huge amounts of, rent, is if you're going to do something like that, sit down with a real estate professional and look at what it would cost to actually buy the real estate, have 3 or 4 people live with them during the 4 years or whatever they're going to college, and see if there's an upside. Because I know around colleges, my grandfather started investing over by Cal State Fullerton in 1968 when it was a very small campus relative to what it is today. And he built an actual empire that today, if he still owned all of it, it'd be worth over $1 billion in today's valuation between the land and the apartment buildings, starting with 4 units going to 1,600 over his lifetime, playing Monopoly and putting every dime back into it. Now, you don't have to have that kind of meteoric and unrealistic success that most people are never going to enjoy, but he taught us how to look at investment property and how to value it and how to show other people how to build a retirement where they can have between $8 to $10 million comfortably from just starting with one single unit. But it all starts with a conversation, and we're willing to do those consultations without any obligation, because educating everyone on it to me is really important, because most people don't look at real estate from the right perspective as to what their future could look like. And now that I'm getting closer to, a lot closer to retirement age than I am to the start of my career, I wish I'd bought every piece of real estate that I had a chance to along the way.
Or even hold it, right?
Even held
Yeah,
it.
even
Held it.
everything.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that many, many times on Ron Siegel Radio. The idea here is get started wherever you are. Get started, buy, hold, add. There's a lot of different methods, and Blake hit it right on the head. It's all about education. We started this radio program back in 2010 with the idea just of educating. And, you just got the offer right there from somebody that's been doing this for now into his second century
But
of doing this kind of real estate investing. If you want to have a private consultation, give me a call. I'd be happy to put you in touch with Blake Vartanian, Jim Norton.